Hey guys, Tom itself here, and I want to talk about recoil and aiming in Call of Duty and Battlefield, and their similarities and differences, and hopefully share some useful advice on how to be as accurate as possible in each game. Also, I want to try and rationalize how I can feel like an aimbot in Modern Warfare 3 and look like a noob in Battlefield. These games are both modern military shooters with very similar gunplay mechanics, both in terms of how the guns work and how different weapon categories are balanced. But first, I need to cover some basics, make sure everyone's on the same page. So in this first video, I'll quickly go over the basic mechanics of gunplay in both Call of Duty and Battlefield series. I'm assuming, as I've only played Battlefield 3, that the other games behave similarly. It's interesting to see how different developers with different game engines approach the same problem of using recoil to make their digital guns feel more like real guns, and also serve as one of the ways to differentiate guns and give them strengths and weaknesses, balance them. If you want even more detail, check out the Dincursion forums and Simthic.com. Both links are in the video description below. Before I get any further, I need to dispel the silly notion that Battlefield guns are the only ones with recoil and Call of Duty doesn't have any recoil. So this MCOM station here is about as tall as a player. If I step back 15 meters and just empty a magazine from this AEK-971, the high recoil assault rifle, without compensating for the recoil at all, it will push my aim up more than the height of the MCOM is tall, but less than 2 MCOMs tall. Now let me do this again, starting at the bottom of the MCOM. And you'll see, again, it's between 1 and 2 MCOMs tall, just a rough gauge of how much recoil is in Battlefield 3.
Hey, don't mind me, just doing a show here, trying to entertain and inform some people, you know, you gotta go and get in the way. Alright, let's do the same thing with Modern Warfare 3 and the G36C. This is about head height, step back 15 meters, and empty the magazine. Again, the total recoil puts the last round out somewhere between 1 and 2 times the height of a player. At first inspection, there isn't a radical difference in recoil, so why is it so common to hear that there is one? The biggest reason is that Battlefield gunfights happen at longer ranges than those in Call of Duty. Battlefield goes through a whole range of magnification from 1.44 all the way up to 12 times zoom for sniper rifles. While Call of Duty, Black Ops 2 for example, goes from 1.1 and tops out at 5.8 with the light machine gun variable zoom. Given the same angular amount of recoil, being zoomed in more is going to make it feel like there's more recoil. Lastly, before I get into specific recoil mechanics, I'll note that Battlefield keeps track of the round in the chamber. You could have 30 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber for 31. Call of Duty doesn't. It means that in Call of Duty you can cancel the last part of the full reload animation to skip working the action, and it won't matter. You can't do this in Battlefield. Neither game keeps track of how many rounds are in the individual magazines that your guy is carrying. They all just go into one big pool. A more authentic simulator like Arma would keep track of the individual magazines. Now to recoil. Hipfire, usually only useful at close ranges, sends rounds randomly somewhere into the hipfire spread indicated by the crosshairs. Hipfire lets you turn faster, and the gun and muzzle flash won't obstruct your view. Exactly how wide the spread and how it varies again is dependent on the weapon and attachments. Usually the spread increases with movement or sustained fire, while decreasing as you go from crouching and again to prone. When you do shoulder the weapon and aim down sights, ADS, the hipfire spread will shrink. What happens next is different in each game. In Call of Duty, the random spread is removed entirely. In Battlefield, it shrinks, but usually doesn't disappear. Exactly how small, again, depends on the weapon and attachments. Heavy barrel, reduce it, the foregrip increases it. But, just like with hipfire, sustained fire will cause the random spread to expand. The significant result of this is that you will retain hipfire accuracy if you start firing from the hip and aim while continuing to shoot. Puppy did a whole video on this a while back if you'd like more detail and examples. Both games also attempt to penalize your accuracy for moving while aiming, just like when you're hip firing and moving and the spread expands. Battlefield will also expand your random spread while ADS based on how fast you're moving. Call of Duty adds sway when you're moving while aiming down sights. The faster you move, the faster the sway. It's fairly minimal, but is present. Now, there is no added sway for moving in Battlefield.
at least none that I can tell. Now, for the main recoil mechanic, the kick and recovery. This applies to both hipfire and ADS, but the random spread when hip firing is much more important. Though you will notice the weapon pull in the direction of its recoil while you are hip firing. You will mostly notice the kick and recovery model while you're aiming down sights. The kick and recovery recoil causes each shot to jerk the aim point of your weapon and the center of your view in a random direction. Exactly how hard and in which direction, again, varies with weapon and attachment, and it is kind of random. That's the nature of the recoil. An opposing force pulls your aim back towards where you started. With fully automatic fire, your weapon has yet to return to its starting point before the next shot is fired, and this is why you'll get drift in a specific direction. In Call of Duty, this specific recoil mechanic is called view kick, and weapons can recoil in any direction. Battlefield weapons do not recoil downwards. It's more of a developer choice than system design, I assume. Another difference in Battlefield is the first shot recoil multiplier. It serves to multiply the recoil of the first shot of your weapon in fully automatic, or burst fire, or every shot if you're in semi-automatic mode. Usually it's greater than 1, and so it increases the amount of a weapon's kick. It's important to note that you have both the point of aim where your weapon will return to once it has recovered from the recoil, and where your weapon is currently pointed. This will make more sense in a moment. In both games, there is a maximum angle recoil can push your aim. This means that with sustained fire, the recoil can appear to disappear. LMGs make for good examples here, so this QBB with rapid fire will only kick so high if I hold down the trigger. Once I stop shooting, it returns to the original point I started at. But if I compensate for the recoil, as you might do, when I stop shooting, it returns to the original point of aim, which is now lowered. Battlefield works in a remarkably similar manner. In fact, it's even more obvious when you've hit the maximum vertical recoil with the weapon. Anyway, that's all for view kick. Let's talk about gun kick. There's a little bit in Battlefield, and it varies a lot with Call of Duty with which game, which weapon, but, well, it's fairly obvious when you run into a significant case of it, like you do on some LMGs with rapid fire in Modern Warfare 3. Gun kick works in a very similar manner to view kick in terms of the kick and recovery model that it uses, except instead of moving your aim, it just shakes the gun on your screen. The problem being that, well, your gun no longer appears to point where your bullets are going, and it becomes harder to aim. Those are the two big factors in terms of recoil of the game, trying to make it feel like you have an actual gun. There are more things that can shake your screen, you can twist your screen, move it all around. There is flinch from getting shot, that'll do all sorts of stuff. And then Battlefield has suppression, making that bullet deviation even larger and blurring your screen. But I don't really need to get onto all those things in order to get to the topics that I really want to cover in the following videos. So I'm going to go over a few more things of Battlefield to round out this video and then wrap things up. In Call of Duty, bullets travel instantaneously in exactly the direction they're pointed until they hit an impenetrable surface or until they just disappear out of the map. This is called hit scan. In Battlefield, bullets are treated as projectiles, so they have travel time and bullet drop, though wind resistance is not taken into account. And we run into one of the additional variables that Battlefield uses that Call of Duty doesn't, and that is the muzzle velocity of your weapon. It varies with the gun, and in some cases with the attachments. The heavy barrel speeds up the round, the suppressor slows it down. The higher the muzzle velocity, the easier it's going to be to use a weapon at longer ranges. Less travel time, you have to leave the target less, and you get less bullet drop. For example, if you have the muzzle velocity, you double the amount of time it takes to get to the target, but you also quadruple the bullet drop. Similarly, if you're shooting at a target twice as far away, it takes twice as long to get there, you get 4 times as much bullet drop. So what this means is that when you're shooting at targets even further away, and not only are you aiming at a smaller target, but you're having to account for more and more bullet drop, and therefore more accurately gauge how far away your target is. In practical terms, this means that for every weapon, because they have different muzzle velocities, you're going to want to get a good feel for how far away people are in the sights when they look a certain size, and how much corresponding bullet drop to account for. Finally, both games have some idle sway. Not just from sidestepping, but from just standing there holding your sights up, they may begin to sway a little bit. It's not as noticeable in Battlefield as it is in Call of Duty, but it is there, and it can make it a little bit harder to aim. And if you want to take a really long sniper shot, you either want to crouch, preferably go prone, and if you have to do it while standing, well, then you can hold your breath, just like you can in Call of Duty, and it will steady your aim so that it makes it easier to line up the shot. In addition to recoil like Call of Duty has, the random spread even when aimed down sights, and the travel time of the bullet, and therefore bullet drop, all serve to help balance the weapons at different ranges and make it so that weapons aren't super effective at really long ranges, the long lines of sight. And Battlefield tries to ensure that there's a difference between being able to see someone and being able to kill them at sufficiently far distances. If you were to add a lot of Battlefield's fancy gunplay mechanics to Call of Duty, it wouldn't really change a whole lot. Most of the gunfights happen at ranges that are close enough that bullet travel time and bullet drop wouldn't make any difference. Alright, that will round out the introduction on gunplay mechanics. Hopefully it was interesting. Thanks for sticking around. Next video, hopefully we can move on to some, well, trying to aim more accurately, and possibly into some more differences between Call of Duty and Battlefield, and maybe even how to do things differently in the two games to be more effective in each. Anyway guys, thanks for sticking around, hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.